Commander Marcus Chun had seen enough alien worlds to know when something was wrong. The crimson moon hanging over Zayrath Prime cast everything in an unnatural red glow, making the ancient spires of the dead city look like they were bleeding. His boots crunched on crystallized sand as he led his exploration team through the ruins, their scanners picking up energy signatures that shouldn't exist on a planet that had been dead for over 1,000 years. "Sir, you need to see this," called out Dr. Sarah Kim, the team's xenoarchaeologist. She was crouched beside what looked like a throne carved from black stone, its surface covered in symbols that seemed to shift and writhe in the red moonlight. Marcus approached cautiously, his hand resting on his plasma rifle. 15 years of military service across the galaxy had taught him that ancient alien artifacts were usually either extremely valuable or extremely dangerous. Often both. "The energy readings are off the charts," Sarah continued, running her scanner over the throne. "But look at these inscriptions. They're not like anything we've encountered before. The symbols appear to be alive somehow." The throne stood in the center of what must have once been a grand hall. Massive columns stretched up into darkness, their surfaces decorated with murals depicting tall, elegant figures with pale skin and elongated features. The figures in the artwork all seemed to be bowing to a central female figure seated on the same black throne. "Looks like royalty," muttered Sergeant Torres, the team's security chief. "Rich folks are the same everywhere, I guess." Marcus studied the murals more closely. The female figure was undeniably beautiful, even rendered in ancient stone. She had flowing hair that cascaded past her shoulders, sharp features that spoke of intelligence and authority, and eyes that seemed to follow the viewer. What struck him most was the expression on her face, not cruel or cold as he might expect from a tyrant, but sad and lonely. "The dating puts this civilization at roughly 1,200 years old," Sarah said, consulting her equipment. "But the preservation is incredible. It's almost like time stopped here." "Maybe it did," said their pilot, Lieutenant Jackson, who was monitoring communications from their ship. "I'm picking up some weird interference, like something's trying to broadcast on our frequencies." Marcus was about to respond when the air around the throne began to shimmer. The temperature dropped noticeably, and frost began forming on their equipment. The symbols on the throne started glowing with a soft blue light. "Everyone back away," Marcus ordered, but even as the words left his mouth, he found himself unable to move. The shimmer intensified, and suddenly, a figure began materializing above the throne. She was tall, perhaps 6.5 feet, with the same pale skin and elegant features as the figures in the murals. Her hair was midnight black and seemed to move with a life of its own. She wore flowing robes that looked like they were woven from starlight itself. But it was her eyes that captured Marcus's attention. Ancient, intelligent, and filled with a profound sadness that seemed to reach across the centuries. The figure, clearly some kind of hologram or projection, looked directly at Marcus. When she spoke, her voice resonated not just in the air, but somehow in his mind. "1,000 years I have waited," she said, her words carrying an accent that was both alien and strangely melodic. "1,000 years of dreams and visions of seeing faces that would never come. And yet, here you stand, exactly as I've seen in my sleep." Marcus tried to speak, but found his voice caught in his throat. The being's presence was overwhelming, not threatening exactly, but impossibly powerful. He could feel the weight of centuries pressing down on him. "You are human," she continued, a note of wonder creeping into her voice. "I had not dared hope that the visions were true. Your species was so young when last I walked among the living." "Who are you?" Marcus finally managed to ask. "I am Queen Astra Vex, last ruler of the Zarathi Empire." She stepped down from the throne, her feet not quite touching the ground. "For 12 centuries, I have ruled over the dead, sustained by the life force I absorbed from my people in their final moments. But even that power has its limits. I am dying, human, truly dying." The hologram flickered, becoming more translucent. But you are the one for my visions. The one who can save me. The one who can save my people. Your people are dead, Torres said bluntly, though his voice shook slightly. This whole planet is a graveyard. Astra's expression grew sad. Dead, yes, but not gone. Their consciousness, their souls, if you will, are bound to me. When I absorbed their life force to survive the great plague that consumed our world, I took all of them into myself. They live within me, 1,000 generations of my people, waiting for the day when they can live again. She turned her full attention back to Marcus. And that day has come, because you are here. I don't understand, Marcus said, though he was beginning to suspect he wouldn't like the explanation. You are my mate, Astra said simply. The one chosen by fate itself to stand at my side. Your life force, combined with mine, will be enough to restore my people to physical form. Together, we can rebuild the Zarathi Empire and rule over a new golden age. The silence that followed was broken only by the distant howling of wind through the ruined city. Marcus's team exchanged glances, their hands moving instinctively toward their weapons. I'm flattered, Marcus said carefully, but I'm already spoken for, and I'm not really the ruling type. Astra's expression didn't change, but the temperature dropped another 10 degrees. You misunderstand. This is not a request. The visions have shown me that you are the one. There can be no other. And if I refuse, then my people remain dead. I fade into nothingness, and you leave this place with the knowledge that you condemned an entire civilization to eternal darkness. Astra's form flickered again, and for a moment Marcus could see through her completely. But you will not refuse. I have seen it. You are a protector by nature, a leader who puts others before himself. You cannot walk away from this. Marcus felt his jaw clench. She was right, and they both knew it. The idea of an entire species trapped in some kind of limbo because he refused to help was exactly the kind of moral weight that would crush him. What exactly would this mating involve? He asked, ignoring the shocked looks from his team. The bonding of life forces, Astra explained. You would become like me, immortal, powerful, sustained by the energy of others rather than food or water. In return, your human vitality would strengthen my essence, allowing me to restore my people to life. You're talking about becoming a vampire, Sarah whispered. Astra tilted her head. I'm unfamiliar with this term, but if you mean one who feeds on the life force of others, then yes. Though I take only what is freely given, and only what is needed to survive. And what about my life? Marcus asked. My career, my family, my world. Your old life would end, Astra admitted, but a new one would begin. As my mate and co-ruler, you would have power beyond imagining. We would explore the galaxy together, building an empire that spans the stars. Your human knowledge and perspective would be invaluable in creating a better future for both our species. Marcus closed his eyes for a moment, trying to process what he was being asked to do. Give up everything he had ever known, become something that wasn't quite human anymore, all to save a species he had never heard of until an hour ago. When he opened his eyes, Astra was watching him with an expression that was almost pleading. I know what I ask is enormous, but I also know who you are, Marcus-chun. I have seen your memories, your choices, your sacrifices. You have never turned away from those who needed you. How do you know my name? How do you know anything about me? The bonding works both ways, she explained. As I have appeared to you in visions throughout your life, so have I seen glimpses of yours. The dreams you dismissed as nightmares, the faces you thought you imagined. That was me, reaching across space and time to find you. Marcus suddenly remembered the recurring dreams he'd had for years. A beautiful woman with sad eyes, reaching out to him from some impossible distance. He'd always assumed they were just stress-induced nightmares from his military service. Even if I agreed, he said slowly, how would this work? You're obviously not physically here. My true form lies in stasis deep beneath this city, Astra replied. What you see is a projection of my consciousness. But if you accept the bonding, I can draw you to me, and we can complete the ritual that will restore both my people and grant us eternal life together. Sir, Torres said quietly, this is insane. We should leave. Now, Marcus looked at his team, good people who trusted him to make the right decisions. Then he looked back at Astra, this ancient queen who claimed she had been waiting 1,000 years for him specifically. If I agree to this, he said, what happens to my team? They came here because of me. They will be free to leave, Astra assured him, though they will carry the memory of what they have witnessed. Perhaps that knowledge will help your species prepare for the changes that are coming. Changes? The galaxy is not as peaceful as your people believe, Astra said, her expression growing grave. There are forces stirring in the dark spaces between stars, ancient enemies that my people once held at bay. If they return and find no Zarathi to oppose them, your young civilization will be among the first to fall. Marcus felt the weight of decision pressing down on him. Save one species to potentially save his own, but at the cost of everything he had ever been. I need time to think, he said finally. Astra nodded, though her form was becoming increasingly transparent. Time is something I have little of. The power that allows me to manifest is nearly exhausted. If you do not decide soon, the choice will be made for you. How long do I have? Until the red moon sets, she replied, gesturing toward the crimson orb visible through a gap in the ruined roof. 3 hours, perhaps 4. After that, I will lack the strength to complete the bonding, and my people will be lost forever. With that, her image faded completely, leaving Marcus and his team alone in the ancient throne room. Sir, Sarah said after a long moment, you're not seriously considering this, are you? Marcus looked around at the murals depicting a once great civilization, then up at the alien moon that would determine not just his fate, but potentially the fate of billions of lives across the galaxy. I don't know, he admitted, but I think we need to learn everything we can about the Zarathi before that moon sets. If there's even a chance she's telling the truth about these ancient enemies, we need to know what we're dealing with. As his team began setting up their equipment to scan the ruins more thoroughly, Marcus found himself staring at the empty throne. Somewhere beneath their feet, an immortal queen waited in stasis for his decision. The weight of countless lives, both human and alien, rested on what he chose to do in the next few hours. For the first time in his military career, Commander Marcus Chin truly had no idea what the right answer was. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of discovery and growing unease. Dr. Kim's scans revealed that the throne room was merely the tip of a massive underground complex that stretched for kilometers beneath the ruined city. The energy readings grew stronger the deeper their sensors penetrated, culminating in what appeared to be a massive chamber far below. The architecture is incredible, Sarah muttered, studying the three-dimensional maps their equipment was generating. These tunnels and chambers form a perfect spiral pattern, like a nautilus shell, and the power source at the center. Marcus, I've never seen readings like this. Marcus examined the data over her shoulder. The central chamber showed energy signatures that defied their instrument's ability to measure accurately. Whatever was down, there was generating enough power to run a small city, and it had been doing so for over 1,000 years. What about the historical records? He asked. Have you found anything that backs up her story? Lieutenant Jackson looked up from his analysis station. The orbital scans confirm massive population centers all across this continent. Estimates suggest this world once supported billions of inhabitants. And the dating is consistent with what the Queen told us. The civilization collapsed approximately 1,200 years ago. But what killed them? Torres asked. A plague doesn't leave cities this intact. That's what's strange, Jackson continued. There's no evidence of warfare, no radiation signatures, no geological catastrophes. It's like everyone just stopped. Sarah pulled up another set of readings. I've been analyzing the murals and inscriptions throughout the complex. The story they tell is fascinating and terrifying. The Zarathi were apparently an incredibly advanced species, masters of what they called life energy manipulation. They could extend their lifespans, heal injuries, even enhance their physical and mental capabilities by drawing energy from other living beings. Vampires, Torres said flatly. Not exactly, Sarah corrected. According to these records, they took only small amounts from willing donors. It was considered a sacred exchange. The donors gained enhanced health and longevity, while the Zarathi gained sustenance. A symbiotic relationship. So what went wrong? Marcus asked. Sarah's expression grew grim. Something they called the Gray Death. Near as I could translate, it was some kind of energy-based plague that attacked the very essence of life itself. Victims didn't die in the traditional sense. They simply faded away, their life force consumed from within. And Queen Astra, the inscriptions suggest she made a desperate choice. Rather than let her people's essence be consumed by the plague, she absorbed all of them into herself. Their memories, their personalities, their souls. She saved their consciousness, but condemned herself to carry the weight of an entire civilization. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the alien atmosphere. For 1,200 years, the mental strain alone should have destroyed her, Sarah continued. But, according to these texts, she entered a state of deep stasis, essentially dreaming for centuries while her body slowly consumed the stored life force to stay alive. And now she's running out, Jackson added quietly. The power readings from below have been steadily declining since we arrived. Our presence here, the energy required to manifest and communicate with us, it's draining her reserves. Marcus walked over to one of the larger murals, studying the depicted scenes more carefully. They showed Zarathi and other species working together, building magnificent cities among the stars. Other panels showed them fighting alongside various alien races against shadowy enemies that seemed to be made of living darkness. Tell me about these enemies she mentioned, he said. The ones her people supposedly held back. Sarah consulted her notes. The texts call them the Void-Touched or Shadow Spawn. They're described as beings from between dimensions, entities that exist in the spaces between realities. According to these records, they feed on entire civilizations, consuming not just life, but the very concept of existence itself. Sounds like mythology, Torres observed. Maybe, Sarah agreed. But the Zarathi were clearly advanced enough to achieve interstellar travel and energy manipulation that borders on magic. If they believed these entities were real enough to fight, then maybe we should too, Marcus finished. The red moon was noticeably lower in the sky when the air in the throne room began to shimmer again. This time, however, Astra's manifestation was much weaker, barely visible and flickering constantly. You have learned much, her voice echoed, though it sounded distant and strained. Do you now understand the choice before you? Some of it, Marcus replied. But I need to know more. If these Void-Touched are real, why haven't they attacked in the last 1,200 years? What's kept them at bay? Astra's form solidified slightly, as if the question gave her strength. Because they believed us dead. The Gray Death that consumed my people. It was their weapon, sent ahead to weaken us before their invasion. But when I absorbed my people's essence, I also absorbed the plague itself, containing it within my being. To their perception, this entire region of space appears lifeless. And if you die, the containment fails. The plague spreads to other worlds, and the Void-Touched will know that life has returned to this sector. They will come, and your people are not prepared to face them. Marcus felt the implications hit him like a physical blow. So I really don't have a choice. Either I bond with you and become something inhuman, or I condemn my entire species to extinction. All life in this region of the galaxy. Astra corrected sadly. The Void-Touched do not discriminate. They will consume everything they encounter until nothing remains but empty space. There has to be another way, Sarah interjected. Some other solution that doesn't require Marcus to sacrifice his humanity. Astra's gaze shifted to the xenoarchaeologist. Your concern for your friend is touching, but you do not understand what I offer. Bonding with me would not diminish his humanity. it would enhance it. He would gain knowledge and abilities beyond imagination while retaining his human perspective and values. But he would never be able to return to Earth, Torres pointed out. Never see his family again. Would that be such a loss? Astra asked. And suddenly, Marcus could feel her presence in his mind, gentle but unmistakably there. Images flashed through his consciousness, his childhood on a colony world, his parents' death in a transport accident, years of military service where he had chosen duty over personal relationships time, and, again, you have already sacrificed your personal life for your principles, Astra continued. You command from the front lines because you cannot ask others to take risks you would not take yourself. You remain unmarried because you refuse to subject someone you care about to the uncertainty and danger of your career. In many ways, you are already isolated from the human connections you claim to value. The truth of her words stung because Marcus recognized himself in them. He had always chosen duty over personal happiness, telling himself it was for the greater good. As my mate and co-ruler, Astra went on, you would have the power to truly make a difference. We could work together to prepare your people for the threats that are coming, to build alliances between species that could stand against the darkness. And in return, all I have to do is give up my humanity and become something that feeds on others to survive. Astra's expression grew pained. You speak of feeding as if it were a violation. But consider, your human military already draws strength from the sacrifice of others. You ask young men and women to risk their lives for concepts like freedom and peace. How is that different from asking for a portion of someone's life energy in exchange for protection and extended longevity? Marcus had no immediate answer for that, and Astra pressed her advantage. Furthermore, the bonding would not make you dependent on others for survival. Once our essences are joined, we would sustain each other. The only external energy we would need would be to perform great works, healing entire planets, extending lifespans, creating technologies that could defend against the void touched. You make it sound almost noble, Jackson observed. Because it is, Astra replied firmly. The Zarathi were not monsters or parasites. We were guardians, protectors of life throughout this region of space. When the void touched first appeared millennia ago, it was my people who organized the resistance, who taught other species how to fight beings that existed partially outside reality. She gestured toward the murals surrounding them. Every species you see depicted here survived because of Zarathi protection. And when the Great Death came, when our enemies finally found a weapon that could destroy us from within, I chose to preserve that protective capability rather than let it die with my people. But you've been asleep for over 1,000 years, Sarah pointed out. How do you know the void touched haven't already moved on? How do you know there's still a threat? Astra's form flickered more violently, and Marcus could sense her growing weakness. Because I dream, young scholar. Even in stasis, my consciousness spans vast distances. I have felt them stirring in the spaces between stars, felt their hunger growing as they search for new galaxies to consume. They are not gone. They are simply waiting. Waiting for what? For the barriers to fall. For the last of the guardian species to die out. For civilizations like yours to advance far enough to be worth their attention. Astra's gaze fixed on Marcus again. Your people are on the verge of that threshold now. Within a few decades, human technology will advance to the point where you begin to explore beyond your local stellar cluster. That expansion will draw their notice. Marcus closed his eyes, feeling the weight of impossible decisions pressing down on him. And you're saying that bonding with you is the only way to prevent that? Not the only way, Astra admitted, but the only way that preserves both our species. You could choose to take your people and flee to another galaxy, abandoning this region of space to the void touched. Or you could try to advance human military capability fast enough to mount an effective defense. Both paths would require sacrificing billions of lives. While bonding with you saves everyone. It gives everyone a chance, she corrected. I will not lie to you, Marcus. Even with our combined power, Victory against the void touched is not guaranteed, but without it, defeat is certain. The red moon was touching the horizon now, its crimson light painting the throne room in shades of blood and shadow. Marcus could feel time running out, could sense Astra's growing desperation as her strength continued to ebb. "There is one more thing you should know," she said softly. "The visions I have had of you, the dreams that have sustained me through centuries of isolation, they were not just of your arrival here. I have seen possible futures, different paths your choice might take us down." "What did you see?" "In some visions, we ruled together as equals, building an empire based on mutual protection and shared prosperity. In others, you become corrupted by power, and I must stop you before you become what the void touched represent. And in still others," she paused, her form becoming almost transparent. "In others, we fall in love." The simple admission hung in the air like a physical presence. Marcus had been thinking of this entire situation as a tactical problem to be solved, but Astra's words reminded him that she was not just an ancient alien queen, but also a woman who had been alone for 12 centuries. "You're not just asking me to save your people," he realized. "You're asking me to save you from an eternity of isolation." "I am asking you to save us all," she replied. "But yes, I confess that the prospect of never being alone again, of having someone who understands the weight of responsibility and the price of leadership, that is not an insignificant factor in my desperation." The red moon slipped behind the horizon, and immediately Marcus could see Astra's manifestation beginning to fade more rapidly. "Choose," she whispered, her voice barely audible now. "I cannot maintain this form much longer. If you will accept the bonding, speak now, and I will use the last of my strength to bring you to my resting place." Marcus looked at his team, these good people who had followed him across the galaxy, and now watched him grapple with a choice that would determine the fate of civilizations. He thought about Earth, about the billions of humans who had no idea their future hung in the balance. He thought about the Zarathi trapped in Astra's consciousness, an entire species waiting for resurrection. And he thought about the woman before him, brilliant and powerful and utterly alone, who had carried the weight of her people's survival for longer than human civilization had existed. "If I do this," he said slowly, "I want your word that my people will be protected, that human civilization will be allowed to develop without interference, except to defend against the void touched." "You have it," Astra replied immediately, "and I want guarantees for my team. Safe passage home, and resources to help prepare Earth for what might be coming." "Done." Marcus took a deep breath, aware that these might be his last moments as a purely human being. "Then I accept. Do what you need to do." Astra's form suddenly blazed brighter, as if his acceptance had given her access to reserves of power she had been hoarding for this moment. "Thank you," she whispered, and the gratitude in her voice was so profound it almost broke his heart. "I swear to you, Marcus Chun, that you will not regret this choice." The air around Marcus began to glow with the same blue light that had emanated from the throne. He felt a strange, tingling sensation, as if every molecule in his body was vibrating at a frequency just beyond perception. "Sir," Torres shouted, reaching toward him, but Marcus held up a hand to stop him. "Let them go," he told Astra. "Send them back to their ship with whatever information they need to prepare Earth." "Already done," she replied, and Marcus saw his team beginning to glow with a softer version of the same light surrounding him. "They will remember everything, and their ship's computers now contain a complete archive of Zarathi knowledge about the void touched." "Thank you," Marcus said, looking at each of his people one last time. "Tell them I made this choice freely. Tell them it was worth it." Before any of them could respond, the light enveloped Marcus completely. He felt a sensation of falling, not through space, but through layers of reality itself, descending towards something vast and patient and unutterably ancient that waited for him in the depths below. Marcus materialized in a vast chamber carved from what looked like crystalline stone. The walls pulsed with veins of blue energy that provided the only illumination, creating patterns that seemed to shift and flow like living rivers. The air itself felt different here, thicker, charged with an energy that made his skin tingle and his hair stand on end. At the center of the chamber stood a circular platform surrounded by intricate machinery that defied easy description. The devices appeared to be grown rather than built, their organic curves and flowing lines suggesting technology that had evolved rather than been designed. And lying at the heart of it all, on a raised dais within a field of shimmering energy, was Queen Astera. In person, she was even more striking than her projection had suggested. Her pale skin had an almost luminescent quality, and her dark hair fanned out around her head like spilled ink. She wore robes that seemed to be made from the same energy that lit the chamber, flowing and shifting with each breath. But what caught Marcus's attention most were her closed eyes. Even unconscious, her face bore an expression of profound sadness. "She has been dreaming for 12 centuries," a voice said behind him. Marcus spun around to find another figure materializing from the shadows, an elderly Zarathi male with silver hair and robes that marked him as some kind of scientist or scholar. "Who are you?" Marcus demanded, his hand instinctively reaching for a weapon that was no longer there. "I am Keeper Valderus, Chief Archivist of the Zarathi Empire," the figure replied with a slight bow. "Like all of our people, my consciousness exists within Queen Astra's mind. But in this place, at the moment of bonding, I am able to manifest independently for a brief time." "You're all really in there with her? The entire population?" "Every Zarathi who lived when the Grey Death came," Valderus confirmed. "Billions of souls preserved within our Queen's essence. We exist as we did in life, thinking, feeling, remembering, but trapped within the confines of her dreams." Marcus approached the dais slowly, studying the complex machinery surrounding Astra's sleeping form. "What is the bonding work? What exactly am I agreeing to?" "The process will merge your life essence with hers," Valderus explained, gesturing toward the nearest device. "Your human vitality will strengthen her failing reserves, allowing her to wake and begin the great work of restoration. In return, you will gain access to all our accumulated knowledge and abilities." "But I'll still be human." Valderus paused, choosing his words carefully. "You will be something new, neither fully human nor fully Zarathi, but a bridge between our species. Your human perspective and values will remain intact, enhanced rather than replaced by our capabilities." "And the price?" "Immortality brings its own burdens," Valderus admitted. "You will watch civilizations rise and fall, will see people you care about age and die while you remain unchanged. You will bear responsibility for the lives of trillions, and the decisions you make will echo across centuries." Marcus studied Astra's sleeping face, noting the lines of strain around her eyes, even in stasis. "She's carried that burden alone for over 1,000 years. Indeed, and it has nearly destroyed her. The weight of our people's consciousness, combined with the isolation and the constant drain of containing the Grey Death, she is far stronger than any Zarathi in our history. But even she has limits. What happens to all of you when she dies?" Valderus's expression grew grave. "We fade into nothing. Not death as you understand it, but complete cessation of existence. And with us dies the last hope of stopping the void touched." Marcus reached out toward the energy field surrounding Astra, but stopped when his hand encountered resistance. The barrier felt warm, almost alive, and he could sense vast depths beneath its surface. "She's beautiful," he said quietly. "In body, yes, but her true beauty lies in her spirit," Valderus replied. "For 12 centuries, she has carried burdens that would have broken lesser beings. She has sacrificed everything, her youth, her freedom, her chance at love and happiness, to preserve what could be saved of our people. Why me, though? What makes me special enough for this?" Valderus gestured toward a section of wall that suddenly, became transparent, revealing a view of the surface far above. Through the crystalline barrier, Marcus could see his team preparing to leave, their ship's engines beginning to glow. Your species is unique in this galaxy, Valdris explained. Most civilizations, when they achieve sufficient technological advancement, become insular and self-focused. They explore primarily for resources and territory, with little thought for other forms of life. And humans are different. Humans are explorers in the truest sense. You seek knowledge for its own sake, form connections with other species not just for advantage, but out of genuine curiosity and empathy. Your military exists not to conquer, but to protect. These qualities make your people ideal allies against the void touched. Marcus thought about his own motivations for joining the Exploration Corps, the sense of wonder he felt whenever they discovered new worlds and new forms of life. So Astra chose me not just as a power source, but as a representative of human values. She chose you because in her visions, she saw a man who would make the same choice she did, sacrificing personal happiness to protect others. Valdris moved to another control station, beginning to activate systems that hummed with barely contained energy. But also because she saw the potential for something neither of our species could achieve alone, which is a new form of civilization, one that combines Zarathi wisdom and power with human adaptability and compassion. Under your joint leadership, the restored Zarathi could become teachers and protectors rather than rulers, helping younger species develop the tools they need to defend themselves. The machinery around the dais began to glow more brightly, and Marcus felt something stirring in the air, a presence vast and complex and utterly alien. He realized he was sensing Astra's sleeping mind, and within it the consciousness of billions of Zarathi. The process is beginning, Valdris announced. Are you prepared? Marcus took one last look around the chamber, at this monument to a civilization's desperate bid for survival. Then he looked at Astra again, at this woman who had given up everything to save her people and now offered him the chance to save his. What I need to do? Step into the field around her platform. The bonding process will handle the rest. But I warn you, it will not be pleasant. You will experience not just Astra's memories, but echoes of every Zarathi consciousness she carries. The sensation can be overwhelming. Marcus nodded and walked toward the energy barrier. As he approached, it began to part before him like water, revealing a pathway to the dais where Astra lay sleeping. One more thing, Valdris called out. The bonding works both ways. Just as you will gain access to our memories and abilities, we will gain access to yours. Astra will see your entire life, understand who you truly are beneath the surface you present to others. Will that change how she feels about me? Valdris smiled, the first truly warm expression Marcus had seen from him. I believe it will only deepen her appreciation for the choice you are making. Marcus stepped onto the platform, and immediately the energy field closed behind him. The sensation was unlike anything he had ever experienced. It felt like being immersed in liquid starlight, warm and electric and alive. He could sense Astra's presence much more strongly now, could feel the vast network of consciousness that existed within her sleeping mind. Astra, he called out softly, I'm here. Her eyes opened slowly, revealing irises that were the deep purple of nebulae. When she saw him, her expression transformed from the sadness he had grown accustomed to into something approaching wonder. You came, she whispered, her voice now carrying harmonics that spoke directly to his soul. Even knowing the cost, even understanding what you would lose, you came. I made a promise, Marcus replied, reaching out to take her hand. Her skin was warm despite the centuries she had spent in stasis. To you, to your people, to my own. I intend to keep it. Astra sat up slowly, the energy field around them beginning to pulse in rhythm with their heartbeats. The bonding cannot be undone once it begins. Are you certain? Marcus thought about Earth, about the future threats his people would face about the woman before him who had waited so long for someone to share her burden. I'm certain. Astra smiled, the first genuine smile he had seen from her, and placed her other hand over his. Then let us begin. The energy surrounding them suddenly intensified, and Marcus felt Astra's consciousness reaching out to touch his own. The sensation was intimate beyond anything physical, as if she were reading not just his thoughts, but the very essence of who he was. Images flashed through his mind, his childhood, his military training, every decision he had made that led him to this moment. But alongside his own memories, he began to see hers as well. Her youth as a princess learning to rule, the first signs of the Grey Death spreading across Arathi worlds, the agonizing choice to absorb her people's essence to save them from total annihilation. And, deeper than that, he felt the presence of the Zarathi themselves. Billions of individual consciousness, each one distinct and complete, all existing within the vast mental landscape of Astra's mind. Scientists and artists, soldiers and farmers, children and elders, an entire civilization living as thoughts and dreams. Welcome, human, a chorus of voices spoke in his mind. Welcome, protector of our queen. The bonding reached its climax, and Marcus felt his very essence beginning to change. His human DNA remained the same, but something deeper was shifting, adapting, evolving. He could feel new capabilities awakening within him. Enhanced strength and speed, the ability to perceive and manipulate life energy, access to knowledge that span millennia. But, most remarkably, he could feel Astra's loneliness beginning to ease. For the first time in 12 centuries, she was no longer alone in bearing the weight of an entire species. He was there with her now, sharing the burden and the responsibility. "It is done," she said, though her lips didn't move. They were communicating directly through their joined consciousness now. "We are bonded, you and I, mates in truth as well as necessity." Marcus flexed his fingers, marveling at the way energy flowed through his body like a second circulatory system. "I can feel them all. Your people. They're really alive in there. And now they are your people as well," Astra replied, rising from the dais with fluid grace. "As are the humans you seek to protect. We are the bridge between worlds now, Marcus, the guardians of life itself." Around them, the chamber began to change. Systems that had lain dormant for centuries came online, and Marcus could sense the vast complex above beginning to awaken. Throughout the ruined city, ancient machinery stirred to life as Astra's restored power flowed through long-dead conduits. "What happens now?" Marcus asked. Astra's expression grew serious as she turned toward a section of wall that had become transparent, revealing a view of the star-filled sky above. "Now we prepare for war. The process of awakening our systems will not go unnoticed. The void touched will sense that the Zarathi have returned, and they will come to investigate. How long do we have? Months, perhaps a year if we are fortunate." She gestured, and holographic displays began materializing around them, showing star charts and tactical analyses. "But that should be sufficient to begin the restoration process and contact your people." Marcus studied the displays, his enhanced consciousness already beginning to process information at superhuman speeds. "We're really going to try to fight beings from another dimension?" Astra moved to stand beside him, and he could feel her presence in his mind like a warm flame. "We're going to try to save every form of life we can reach before they arrive. And, yes, when the time comes, we will fight, because the alternative is the end of everything." Looking at the woman who was now his mate and co-ruler, at the vast responsibility they shared and the impossible odds they faced, Marcus felt something he hadn't expected: hope. Whatever came next, whatever sacrifices would be required, he would not face it alone, and neither would she. The age of the Zarathi was about to begin again, and this time they would have humanity standing beside them. 6 months had passed since the bonding, and Marcus barely recognized the world around him. The dead ruins of Zerath Prime had been transformed into a bustling center of activity as ancient systems came online, and the restoration process began in earnest. Towering spires that had stood empty for centuries now glowed with renewed energy, their crystalline surfaces pulsing with the rhythm of reawakened technology. Standing on the observation deck of the restored palace, Marcus watched as the first group of Zerathi emerged from the restoration chambers below. Their physical forms were perfect recreations of their original bodies, grown from genetic templates and infused with consciousness drawn from Astra's vast mental repository. But the process was slow and energy-intensive. They could only restore a few hundred individuals at a time. "Another successful batch," Astra said, joining him at the viewing window. 6 months of sharing consciousness had created an intimacy between them that went far beyond physical attraction. They knew each other's thoughts and feelings as well as their own, could communicate across vast distances through their mental link. That brings us to about 5,000 restored so far, Marcus calculated, accessing the data files that were now as natural to him as breathing. At this rate, it'll take centuries to bring back everyone. "We have time," Astra assured him. "The void touched have not yet detected our presence, and each restored Zerathi adds to our collective power. The process will accelerate as more of our people rejoin us." Marcus nodded, but his attention was focused on something else entirely. Through their enhanced sensors, he had been monitoring transmissions from human space for weeks. What he was seeing concerned him greatly. "Astra, we need to talk about the situation developing on Earth." Her expression grew serious as she accessed the same data streams he was monitoring. The images that filled the air around them showed massive shipyards in orbit around Earth and its colonies, construction projects on a scale humanity had never attempted before. Fleets of warships were taking shape, their designs incorporating technology that was clearly not of human origin. "Your people are preparing for war," Astra observed. "They're using the information my team brought back," Marcus confirmed. "But they're doing it wrong. These ship designs, these weapons, they're copying Zerathi technology without understanding the principles behind it." The displays showed him more troubling details. The human ships were heavily armed, but lacked the sophisticated shielding and life support systems that would allow them to survive an encounter with the void touched. Worse, their weapons were designed to fight physical enemies, not beings that existed partially outside normal reality. "They're building a military force that will be slaughtered the moment it encounters our true enemies," Marcus said grimly. "Perhaps," Astra agreed, "but they are also demonstrating the human capacity for rapid adaptation and cooperation that makes your species so valuable. These preparations may be flawed, but they show that humans will fight to defend themselves and others." Marcus turned away from the displays, frustrated by his inability to directly help his own people. "I should go to them, explain what we've learned, help them prepare properly, and reveal that you are no longer human." Astra asked gently, "That you have bonded with an alien queen and now rule over a species they know only from ancient legends?" She was right, and Marcus knew it. His transformation had been complete. While he retained his human memories and personality, his physical appearance had subtly changed. His skin had taken on the same faint luminescence as Astra's. His eyes had shifted to a deep blue that seemed to hold starlight, and his hair had darkened to match hers. To human sensors, he would register as alien. "There has to be another way," he insisted. "There is," Astra said, moving to stand beside him. "We sent an emissary, someone who can speak for us, but who remains recognizably human. My team returned months ago. If any of them try to contact Earth directly with claims about alien queens and interdimensional threats, they'd be dismissed as suffering from some kind of space madness. Then we give them proof they cannot dismiss." Astra gestured, and the air around them shimmered. When it cleared, they were no longer on the observation deck, but in the vast computer core that served as the heart of Zerathi technology. The chamber was filled with floating data crystals, each one containing the accumulated knowledge of a civilization that had spanned galaxies. "We have been working to decode the Great Death," Astra explained, moving to a particular cluster of crystals that pulsed with ominous dark energy. "The plague that destroyed my people was not a natural phenomenon. It was a weapon designed by the Void Touch to weaken civilizations before invasion." Marcus studied the data, his enhanced understanding allowing him to grasp concepts that would have been incomprehensible to his human mind. "You found a cure? Better. We have found a way to immunize living beings against the plague's effects." She gestured again, and new information flowed into his consciousness. A treatment that not only protects against the Grey Death, but enhances the subject's natural resistance to all forms of entropy-based weapons. The kind of weapons the Void Touched use. Exactly. But the treatment can only be administered by someone with our combined abilities, someone who understands both human and Zarathi biology well enough to adapt the process. Marcus began to see where this was leading. "You want me to go to Earth?" "I want us to go to Earth," Astra corrected. "Together. We will offer this treatment to your people, demonstrate its effectiveness, and in doing so prove that we are allies rather than threats. And once they trust us, then we help them prepare properly for what is coming. We teach them to build ships that can actually survive encounters with the Void Touched, weapons that can harm beings that exist partially outside reality, and defenses that can protect entire star systems from interdimensional attack." Marcus considered the proposal, weighing the risks and benefits. Revealing themselves to humanity would be dangerous. Fear and suspicion could easily turn potential allies into enemies. But the alternative was watching his people prepare for a war they could never win. "How do we make contact without triggering a panic?" Astra smiled, and Marcus felt her amusement through their bond. "We use the one thing that always gets humanity's attention, a mystery they cannot solve." Over the following weeks, strange reports began reaching Earth from across human space. Ships traveling between colonies reported seeing vessels of unknown design observing them from just beyond sensor range. The alien ships never approached or made contact, but they were clearly not human in origin. Their hulls were smooth and organic-looking. They moved without any visible propulsion systems, and they seemed to appear and disappear at will. The human military responded predictably, dispatching fleets to investigate. But every time they arrived at a reported sighting, they found nothing but empty space and sensor readings that made no sense. Meanwhile, Marcus and Astra were conducting their own reconnaissance, studying human preparations and identifying key leaders who might be receptive to their eventual approach. They observed the massive shipyards from stealth, analyzed the weapons being developed, and watched the training exercises that were preparing human forces for interstellar warfare. "They have courage," Astra noted during one observation session, "but their tactics are based on fighting enemies like themselves. They have no concept of how to battle beings that can phase in and out of reality at will. The Void Touched can do that. Among other abilities, they exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, which makes them extremely difficult to target with conventional weapons. And they can manipulate entropy itself, causing technology to fail and living beings to age rapidly during combat." Marcus watched human pilots practicing combat maneuvers in space fighters that looked impressive, but would be useless against their true enemies. "So how do we fight them?" "With weapons that exist in multiple dimensions as well," Astra replied, activating a holographic display that showed Zarathi battle tactics. "Our technology was designed specifically to combat the Void Touched. Weapons that fire energy patterns rather than physical projectiles, shields that exist partially outside normal space, and, most importantly, the ability to work together on a mental level that allows for instantaneous coordination across vast distances. The kind of mental linking that you and I share." "Exactly. But such abilities cannot be simply given to humans. They must be developed gradually through training and enhancement that builds on existing neural pathways. The immunization treatment we developed is only the first step. Their surveillance of human space was interrupted by something unexpected, a transmission from Earth specifically addressed to the unknown vessels observing human activities. The message was broadcast on frequencies that no human technology should have been able to generate, using mathematical concepts that suggested a deep understanding of interdimensional physics. Someone on Earth had not only detected their presence, but had figured out how to communicate with them. Interesting, Astra mused as they analyzed the transmission. Your DR. Kim has been busy. The message was indeed from Marcus's former teammate, but it had obviously been crafted with help from other experts. It was carefully worded to avoid seeming threatening, while making it clear that humanity knew they were being watched. We know you are there, the message stated. We know you are not human, and we know your technology is far beyond ours. We also know that our former expedition leader, Commander Marcus Chun, has not been seen since the mission to Zerath Prime. If you're responsible for his disappearance, we demand his return. If you are not, we request information about his fate. They care about you, Astro observed. Sarah always was persistent, Marcus replied, feeling a complex mix of emotions about hearing from his old friend. And she's found a way to make contact that puts the ball in our court. Then, perhaps it is time to make our move. The response came 3 days later, a single ship appearing in orbit around Earth without any warning or fanfare. It was clearly alien in design, its hull flowing and organic like a living creature, but it made no aggressive moves. Instead, it simply transmitted a request for permission to approach and deliver a message. The ship that materialized was one of Astra's personal vessels, grown rather than built, and powered by the same life energy that sustained them. Marcus stood on the bridge beside his mate and co-ruler, preparing for what might be humanity's first formal contact with a truly alien civilization. Are you ready? Astra asked. Marcus looked out at the blue marble that was his birth world, at the fleets of human ships taking defensive positions around it, and at the space stations where billions of his former people waited to learn whether this contact would mean salvation or conquest. As ready as anyone can be for this, he replied. Their ship began its approach to Earth, carrying with it the promise of salvation and the threat of transformation that would change humanity forever. Behind them, on Zerath Prime, thousands of restored Zerathi prepared for the greatest challenge their species had ever faced, not conquest or dominion, but partnership with a young and unpredictable species that might be the galaxy's only hope against the darkness that was coming. The age of isolation was ending. The age of alliance was about to begin. The meeting took place on Luna Station, humanity's largest orbital facility. It was neutral ground, heavily defended but not threatening, and large enough to accommodate the delegates from both species who had gathered to witness this historic first contact. Marcus stood beside Astra in the station's central conference chamber, acutely aware of the stares they were attracting from the human delegation. His transformation was obvious now. While still recognizably the man they remembered, he had clearly become something more than human. Astra, for a part, wore a simple black dress that somehow managed to look both elegant and intimidating. Commander Chun, Dr. Sarah Kim, stepped forward, her voice carefully controlled. Or should I address you by some other title now? Marcus is fine, he replied, noting the way her eyes tracked the subtle changes in his appearance. Though I suppose King Consort would be technically accurate. King Consort to what exactly? Admiral Harrison, the head of Earth's military forces, demanded bluntly. Our xenobiology experts have been analyzing the data your team brought back, and the picture they paint is pretty disturbing. A species of energy vampires who conquered half the galaxy before mysteriously disappearing. The Zerathi never conquered anyone, Astra replied, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to command. We protected younger species from threats they could not face alone. The mysterious disappearance you mentioned was actually a desperate sacrifice to contain a plague weapon deployed by our enemies. Enemies who you claim are now threatening us. Admiral Harrison continued skeptically. How convenient that you show up, just as we're developing our own defenses, offering to help for an unspecified price. Marcus felt Astra's irritation through their bond and gently touched her mind, urging patience. These humans had no context for what they were dealing with, and fear was making them defensive. The price is survival, Marcus said quietly. For all of us. Admiral, the weapons you're building, the ships you're constructing, they won't work against the void touched. They're designed to fight enemies like ourselves, not beings that exist partially outside our reality, says the man who's clearly been compromised by alien influence, another military officer muttered. Compromised? Astra's eyes flashed with anger. Your Marcus chose to bond with me to save both our species. He sacrificed his humanity to gain the power needed to protect billions of lives. And what guarantee do we have that he's still acting in humanity's interests? Admiral Harrison pressed. Before Marcus could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Emergency lighting bathed the conference chamber in red as automated systems announced the detection of multiple unknown contacts approaching the Sol system. Admiral, a communication officer's voice crackled through the intercom. We're reading massive energy signatures at the edge of the system, unlike anything in our databases. Through the chamber's large viewing window, they could see flashes of light in the distance. Not the clean energy signatures of human or Zarathi technology, but something darker, more chaotic. They're here, Astra whispered, her face pale with recognition. The void touch have found us. The displays around the chamber lit up with tactical information as Earth's defense forces scrambled to respond. The approaching contacts were unlike anything in human experience. Ships that seemed to be made of condensed shadow, their forms shifting and writhing as if they couldn't quite maintain physical coherence. How many? Marcus asked, accessing the data streams through his enhanced abilities. 12 vessels, the communication officer reported. But, Admiral, they're not showing up consistently on our sensors. They keep phasing in and out of existence. That's because they exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, Astra explained, moving to the chamber's central holographic display. Your weapons will only affect them when they choose to become fully physical. As they watched, the human fleet moved to intercept the intruders. 50 of humanity's finest warships, armed with the most advanced weapons human science could produce. The first engagement lasted less than 30 seconds. The void-touched ships didn't even seem to fire back. Instead, they simply existed near the human vessels. And wherever they appeared, the human ships began to age rapidly. Metal corroded, energy systems failed, and crew members aged decades and moments before their ships lost structural integrity and broke apart. Entropy manipulation, Astra said grimly. They're accelerating the natural decay of anything they focus on. In minutes, half the human fleet was gone. The remaining ships tried to retreat, but the void-touched vessels followed, their forms flickering in and out of reality as they pursued. We have to help them, Marcus said, but Astra was already moving. All human personnel, evacuate this chamber immediately, she commanded, her voice carrying an authority that brooked no argument. What we must do next will be dangerous for unprotected minds. Most of the delegation hurried toward the exits, but Sarah Kim and Admiral Harrison remained. We're staying, the Admiral declared. If you're going to do something that affects our people, we have a right to witness it. Astra looked at Marcus, who nodded. Dr. Kim and Admiral Harrison have the right to see this. But stay well back and don't interfere. The chamber's atmosphere began to change as Astra and Marcus joined their consciousness fully for the first time in front of human observers. Energy swirled around them, and their forms began to glow with the same blue light that powered Zarathi technology. We call upon the memories of our people, Astra intoned, her voice now carrying harmonics that spoke directly to the soul. We call upon the knowledge of warriors who fought these enemies for millennia. Around them, translucent figures began materializing, The consciousness of ancient Zarathi warriors, tacticians, and weapon masters, all drawn from the vast mental repository that Astra carried within her mind. By the stars, Sarah whispered. They're all real. All those people really are alive inside her. The ghostly Zarathi began moving to control stations throughout the chamber, their spirit forms interfacing with Luna Station's systems in ways that should have been impossible. Through their combined will and knowledge, the station itself began to transform. Marcus felt the change as the station's defensive systems evolved, guided by the memories of beings who had fought the Void Touch for centuries. Weapons that had been designed to fire physical projectiles now channeled multidimensional energy. Shields that had relied on electromagnetic fields now extended partially into parallel dimensions. Warning, the station's AI announced. Massive power fluctuations detected. Hull modifications in progress. Through the viewing window, they could see Luna Station reshaping itself, its structure becoming more organic and flowing as Zarathi biotechnology merged with human engineering. The transformation spread to the remaining human ships as well, their hulls adapting to incorporate technology that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Now we show them how the Zarathi fight, Astra declared. The transformed human fleet turned to face the Void Touched, and this time the battle was different. When the shadow ships tried to phase out of reality to avoid attack, the enhanced human weapons followed them into parallel dimensions. When they attempted to accelerate entropy, the new shields dispersed the effect harmlessly. For the first time in the engagement, human weapons found their targets. The Void-touched ships, accustomed to being untouchable, suddenly found themselves vulnerable. Dark energy bled from their hulls as multidimensional weapons tore through their exotic matter. But the victory came at a cost. Marcus could feel the strain on the human crews as their minds tried to process sensory input from multiple dimensions simultaneously. Several ships had to withdraw as their crews became disoriented by the enhanced perception required to fight these enemies. They need training, Astra observed. Mental conditioning to handle multidimensional awareness. Which takes time we don't have, Marcus replied, watching as more Void touch contacts appeared at the edge of the system. This was just a scouting force. The remaining shadow ships retreated, but not before transmitting something, a signal that rippled through dimensions and announced to their masters that life had returned to this region of space. As the immediate threat receded, the ghostly Zarathi figures began to fade, their consciousness returning to the mental repository where they resided. The station gradually returned to normal, though subtle changes remained, improvements that would take human scientists years to fully understand. Admiral Harrison and Dr. Kim stood in stunned silence, trying to process what they had witnessed. That was incredible, Sarah finally said. The integration of consciousness, the dimensional technology, but the human crews couldn't handle it for long. Which is why we need the enhancement treatments, Marcus explained. The immunization against the Gray Death is just the beginning. With proper conditioning, humans can develop the mental flexibility needed to fight these enemies effectively. And the price for this conditioning? Admiral Harrison asked, though his tone was less hostile than before. Partnership, Astra replied simply. Full alliance between our species. Shared knowledge, shared resources, shared responsibility for defending this region of space. Under Zarathi leadership, you mean? Under joint leadership, Marcus corrected. Human values and adaptability combined with Zarathi knowledge and power. Neither species can face what's coming alone. Admiral Harrison looked out at the transformed ships, at the wreckage of vessels that had been destroyed before the enhancement, and at the two beings who had just demonstrated capabilities beyond human comprehension. How long do we have to decide, he asked. The main Void Touch force will arrive within weeks, Astra estimated. But the enhancement process takes months to complete safely. We need to begin immediately if we're going to have any chance of mounting an effective defense. And if humanity refuses? Marcus felt the weight of the moment, the decision that would determine whether his birth species survived the coming storm. Then, We'll defend Earth anyway, for as long as we can. But without human cooperation, we can only delay the inevitable. Dr. Kim stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. The consciousness integration you just demonstrated, it's not just telepathy, is it? You're actually sharing memories and experiences. Among many other things, Astra confirmed. It is how we coordinate on a level that allows for instantaneous tactical responses across vast distances. It is also how we maintain our civilization across centuries, with each generation building directly on the knowledge of those who came before. Show me, Sarah said suddenly. Let me experience it directly. Sada, no. Admiral Harrison protested, but she held up a hand to stop him. This is first contact with a civilization that has technology centuries ahead of ours, she said firmly. We need to understand what they're offering and what it will cost us. Astra looked at Marcus, who nodded slowly. A brief contact only, he said, just enough to demonstrate the potential. Astra reached out and gently touched Sarah's forehead. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, Sarah's eyes widened as her consciousness expanded to encompass perspectives she had never imagined. Through Astra's memories, she experienced the fall of the Zarathi Empire, felt the weight of carrying billions of consciousness for 12 centuries, understood the scope of the threat approaching Earth. But more than that, she felt the genuine love and partnership between Marcus and Astra. The way their combined perspectives created something greater than either could achieve alone. When the contact ended, Sarah staggered slightly, tears streaming down her face. It's beautiful, she whispered. Terrible and overwhelming, but beautiful. The connections, the shared understanding. It's like experiencing the universe through the eyes of gods. Admiral Harrison looked between his xenobiologist and the two rulers who had just offered humanity a chance at survival. I'll need to contact Earth Command, he said finally. This decision is above my authority level. Of course, Marcus replied. But, Admiral, don't take too long. The clock is ticking for all of us. As the human delegates prepared to leave Luna Station, Marcus and Astra stood together, watching Earth turn slowly in the distance. Somewhere beyond the edge of the solar system, the Void Touched were gathering their forces for an assault that would determine the fate of all life in this region of space. Do you think they'll agree? Astra asked. Marcus considered the question, thinking about human nature, about his species' capacity for both cooperation and conflict. They'll argue about it, debate the implications, worry about the cost. But in the end, they'll choose survival. They always do. And if they don't, Marcus took her hand, feeling the warmth of their bond flowing between them. Then, we make our stand anyway, together like we promised. Above them, the stars wheeled in their courses, indifferent to the drama playing out below. But somewhere among those distant lights, two species prepare to face an enemy that threatened to extinguish all life in the galaxy. The outcome would depend on whether they could overcome their differences in time to stand together against the darkness. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance, and the clock continued to tick toward an encounter that would determine whether life or entropy would ultimately prevail in this corner of the universe.